Happy Monday, everyone. This is Martha with Nature Niche, and looking ahead, it's March, looking forward to spring. I thought it might be helpful to talk to you this week, and honestly, I think the whole month of March, I'll be focusing on bird houses, also known as nest boxes. I've certainly seen an uptick in customer questions about providing nest boxes for their birds, and I want to help with that. I want to help you be the best nest box landlord you can be. Our native cavity nesting birds often have a shortage of suitable places to nest and raise their young. So by providing nest boxes, we help those particular species be able to reproduce and keep their population numbers strong. Just a reminder, if you were putting up nest boxes or if you left them up all winter, you're going to want to disinfect them and get them ready for the nesting season. So nesting season typically starts around mid-February in the southern United States and mid to late March up here where we are in more of the northern United States. So for details on that, you can check out Monday with Martha number 44, where I talk about preparing for the spring nesting season. Today I want to go over some important features to make sure you have when you're either building or buying a nesting box, and a little bit about kind of the right box for the right bird, information on that. So as far as key design features go, I think aesthetics are nice, but they are secondary to the health and safety of the birds. Whatever we do, we want to first do no harm and make sure the habitat that we're providing for them is actually, helpful and healthy and safe for them to use. So you want to think about the materials that the box is made out of or that you're building it out of. Untreated wood is most commonly recommended. Unpainted, non-pressure treated. We're trying to avoid fumes. The birds spend a lot of time, the adults incubating and the nestlings as they're growing spend a lot of time in this environment, and we don't want fumes or contact with chemicals to happen, like pesticides, insecticides, or fungicides, which a lot of the treated wood has. So for the smaller songbird boxes, those are often made out of naturally rot-resistant cedar, like these boxes. Or some folks, we have a local woodworker in Midland here experimenting with making boxes out of very dense, sustainably sourced tropical wood called tiger wood. So very heavy, very dense, very rot-resistant. And so a well-built box out of something like cedar should last you 10 to 15 years, even longer, decades, with material like tiger wood, maybe a little less if you're using something like pine or cypress. Larger owl boxes tend to be made out of non-pressure treated CDX exterior grade plywood. And I get questions about, should I paint my box or not paint? And basically what I found was that there are no peer-reviewed studies to help guide us. So just as a best practice, you often see recommendations not to paint. Or if you're going to paint, only do the roof or the outside, never the inside walls or the floor. And if you're going to paint, use a non-toxic, no or low emission like latex paint. You want to use light natural colors. Often boxes are painted in hotter climates, and that's to try to keep them from overheating. And you want to make sure you paint in the fall to give that box all those winter months to for the fumes to dissipate as the paint cures. So you want to do that in the fall before you put the boxes up in the spring. Generally, recycled materials are not recommended because they can be flimsy or frail, have contaminants, or don't regulate temperatures well. I do have makers who create boxes out of very thick recycled plastic lumber called polywood. Again, there are no peer-reviewed studies to help guide us, but I have talked to the makers, and the plastic is nice in that it's very easy to disinfect, and this is a lifetime box. If you take care of it, this one's gonna hold together and last a lifetime, so a good investment from that perspective. They do tend to run a little hotter than boxes made out of natural wood, so you might want to consider that. That could be a bonus in colder climates, in cool springs, having that box be a little warmer or heat up quickly. Maybe not so great in really hot, full sun, or just hotter climates. So something to keep in mind, keep an eye on, and share your observations if you are using polywood boxes. Also, for materials, you want to think about what you're using to attach the boards together. Galvanized or stainless steel screws are recommended. They help hold the wood together better than nails. Nails can loosen with time. They can let rainwater in. I do know some makers who use nails use super glue once they have them in to help mitigate those effects. But it's easier to remove screws if you ever have to do a repair or maintenance, and you definitely don't want to use staples, because those, as the wood shrinks and swells, those can back out and be a scratch hazard, and the boards can gap and let rainwater in. So really, one of the main goals you want to do with your nest box is to keep that nest dry. So sloped roofs are recommended, and that's to help shed rainwater quickly. Roof overhangs are also important. So you can see here, that front roof overhang, it's recommended to be 2 to 4 inches. I've also seen recommendations for side overhangs of about 2 inches to help keep the driving rain out, and it also helps shade the box and help with temperature regulation. Recessed floors are another great feature to have. So that is where the sides of the box come down past the bottom of the floor, and you want them to come past at least 1/4 inch, and that's to help shed the rainwater down the side of the box and keep the nest and materials and the nestlings dry. And it'll help the bottom of your box last longer too. And then drainage holes are important. Cornell Lab of Ornithology recommends 4 minimum at about 3/8 inch to 1/2 inch in diameter to allow any water that does get inside the box to drain out and away from the nest. And you can do that by drilling holes, or a lot of times makers will just shave off the corners of the floor to give you a drainage hole in each corner at the bottom of the box. And then you might also consider something called a nest lift, and that's where you take a 3/8 inch mesh hardware cloth, and you can either bend it down or cut slats on the inside of your box and put that in the bottom. So you could insert that right here. And what you're trying to do with that is provide extra drainage under the nest materials. That 3/8 inch mesh is important because if it's a 1/2 inch, that's too big, and something like chickadee eggs can actually fall through that mesh. 3/4 inch is too tight, because one of the other things, a reason to use a nest lift is to help manage blowfly larvae, and those tend to drop down as they mature and pupate and be down at the bottom of the box. So that helps you remove them, and if that mesh is too fine, you won't have that dropping action happening. But a nest lift that's a 1/2 inch to 1 inch off of the floor of the box might be something else that you consider. As far as regulating temperatures go, having the thick walls really helps. So you want to make sure you're building or buying boxes that are made out of 3/4 inch wood. So lumber is sold as 1 inch, 1 x, but it's actually 3/4 of an inch thick. So that's the best insulation from temperature extremes. Having those roof overhangs also help by providing shade. And then you want ventilation holes in your boxes. So you can see here. And those 2 or more holes about 5/8 inch in diameter near the top of the box to allow for air exchange. So that can be done with holes towards the top. I've also seen makers use just a complete top vent, the wood set down a little bit from the top of the roof. So ways that you can provide good ventilation for your nest boxes. You want to make sure that the nest boxes are built in a predator and have built-in predator and competition protection. So you don't want perches. If you see bird houses with perches on the front, chances are those were designed without the birds in mind and more for the aesthetic. So if you're going to have those out, it's best just to seal them up and not let anything nest in them. And that's because the perches, they're not necessary for our native songbirds, but they do favor the invasive house or English sparrows, and they help predators like mammals. So think raccoons and squirrels and chipmunks. It helps them get in, snake species, things like that. So no perches. Having a built-in predator guard, so these extra blocks on the front around the entryway of the boxes. Those are helpful because it makes it a longer reach into the box. So it's harder for like raccoons or squirrels to reach in and get the nestlings or the eggs. And it makes it harder for like chewing action for mammals or other species like woodpeckers to open or widen the entry hole more than you would like it. And then sometimes they're built in, or you at least want to look or set up your box so that you could add a metal portal to the front. And these come in different sizes depending on what your target bird species is. You're trying to provide nesting habitat. So often in a circle or square outer layout. And for those that helps, again, prevent predators and other competing species to enlarge that entry hole. And sometimes I've even seen, like, this is the Stovall Ultimate Bluebird House. They put a metal ring on the inner perimeter of that entry hole. That serves the same function. So reduce chewing and widening of that entry hole. You also want to think about health and hygiene, and one of the criteria for whether I carry a box or not is, does it open? I say that healthy nest boxes should open, at least for clean out. Even better if it's easy to open for monitoring. And more on monitoring of your nest boxes, check out Monday with Martha number 10. So I wouldn't buy boxes that don't open. That leads to mold accumulating in that old nesting material and parasites that could transfer from brood to brood or year to year. You really do need to clean out your nest boxes after the nesting season and in between broods. If you have a species like bluebirds that have multiple broods per season, if you can get in there and get those materials out in between. It's okay if you don't. You also, again, consider that nest lift from a hygiene perspective because of parasitic blowfly larvae and those late larvae and pupa management. They drop down and you can pull those out as a health management technique. And it's important to have a sturdy closing mechanism or latch to make sure it's easy to open and close and that it stays closed. So that can be like a pull pin mechanism. This one opens to the front for monitoring with a hinge at the bottom. Lots of different. Here's another style of pull pin. This one lifts to be able to check, monitor, and clean out. Some boxes, like often the hanging chickadee wren boxes, just the roof will lift off. But you can get in here, you can clean it out, you can check on the safety of the birds. A lot of times you'll see like an ultimate bluebird house, and those often open from two sides, a full open for clean out, and then some have viewing windows with plexiglass on the side for checking without disturbing the nest materials when you open the door. You also want to think about fledgling egress, and that's, basically you need something for the baby birds to be able to get a foothold as they're leaving the box, that as they're fledging. And a lot of times just rough interior walls, not having the board sanded, that plain wood is good enough for small boxes like chickadee wren. Deeper boxes you may want to roughen, if they are smooth boards, roughen that with some coarse sandpaper. You can also do interior grooves, so shallow horizontal cuts, or you can do overlapping circles. I've seen professionally made boxes that way, but you can see the grooves on the inside of this one below the entry hole. Here's an example of those overlapping circles, and basically you're creating a little ladder to help the nestlings get out of the box. So that's important to think about, and that's good for like medium-sized boxes. Things like bluebirds and especially swallows need a little extra help getting out of the box that first time. Plastic screening I've seen on some of the polywood boxes. You just want to make sure that stays in good condition and doesn't end up peeling away and becoming like a foot or wing trap hazard. And often you'll see metal, like 1/4 inch mesh hardware cloth from floor to the hole on deeper boxes like the wood duck boxes, just to help the ducklings get a foothold and get out. So I wanted to end with a few comments on making sure you pick out the right box for the right bird for the right place. So you want to make sure that your area, your yard or property, wherever you want to put nest boxes, has the suitable habitat for the target species you're trying to provide nest habitat for. And you want to provide a box with the appropriately sized entry hole. It has to be big enough for them to be able to get in, and close to their preferred interior dimensions and layout of that box. So for that, I always point my customers to Cornell Lab of Ornithology's All About Birdhouses website. I'll definitely provide some links there in the comments on this YouTube video or on the description. And that you can filter by your region and your habitat type to get a short list of species that you're most likely to encounter. You can also pay attention to what you see around your bird feeders and your bird baths, or what your neighbors tend to see. Use that to help choose what kind of bird you want to attract. Make sure you get the right birdhouse for them. And there are general guidelines on entry hole size. I've seen some differences in fractions. I wouldn't worry too much about slight differences. In all honesty, the birds don't always read the book, and I've had house wrens nesting happily in my ultimate bluebird house. So, but for wrens and chickadees, generally they have the smallest entry hole size at 1 inch to about 1 1/8 inches. And then it scales up to boxes for nuthatches, tufted titmice at about 1 1/8 inches, 1 1/4 inches. I've seen even 1 3/8 inches. And 1.5 inches entry hole size is pretty standard for eastern bluebirds. And then scaling up to for northern flickers, about 2.5 inches. And 3 inches for species like kestrels and screech owls. So some basic things to think about when choosing the right nest box for your property. Take care and have a good week.